this is about to be I'm gonna try to make it quick. This is gonna be my January reads and reviews, so the books that I read in January. What's up, you guys? Welcome to my channel. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. I read 3 books in January, and I just want to give you guys my opinion on them. I read a lot, and I've always been wanted to create this space where I wanted to have critical conversations about the books that I read. And since I haven't been able to cultivate that in person with any type of group, I want to use my YouTube platform just to talk about books. And if it's, you know, hopefully if you haven't read it, maybe I can introduce somebody to something new. And if you have read it, tell me what your thoughts are on the book down below, and we can get to chatting about books. I love talking about books, you guys. So the 3 books that I read in January were Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, Edwidge Danticat's Everything Inside, and How to Be Single and Happy by Jennifer L. Taitz. Yeah, so the first one I read was Things Fall Apart, and this was my second time reading this book. I originally read it in high school. It was a required reading when I was in like 10th grade, and I remember actually loving the book at the time, probably just because it was Black characters and it was interesting. But it's so crazy how my perspective on the book is completely different as an adult 10-11 years later. Like, a lot of the things that I noticed in the book now, you know, just didn't click to me as a teenager. And so I find that pretty fascinating, like just some of the themes that I just wasn't gonna understand as a teenager. I mean, maybe teenagers now understand because they have access to so much more information than we did back then. But I, you know, as far as like the rampant misogyny and like how he abused his him as in Okonkwo, the main character in the book, like, it was a bit much, honey. It definitely, the book now definitely won't be on like my favorites or anything, but I will say I did enjoy the read. It was very quick. I finished it probably in one day. I actually listened to the audiobook, which is on YouTube, and I think it was on there just because like a lot of students have to read it, and it may be hard for some students to purchase the book. I don't think I purchased the book in high school, so, but let me not ramble. The book was pretty good, and I think I would recommend it. But it's very much obviously for young people who are just learning about the transatlantic slave trade, and just I feel like that story gives a lot of nuance. I would categorize Things Fall Apart as a historical fiction, because it is a fictional story, but it is rooted in a lot of historical context. So I think that the purpose of the book is to have a nuanced conversation about how slavery came to be. It didn't just, you know, happen in the flash. Like, these people infiltrated established tribes that had their own way of doing government and business and trading and different things like that, and they didn't like, I feel like they tricked them, but it was very subtle, and those things were strategic, and it doesn't make those people less smart than the Europeans who colonized them. It just was this very complex situation that they in, and the intent of the colonizers was to colonize them. So I think that they were going to do it, whether, you know, because there were characters who complied and there were characters who did not. So, you know, you had that that back and forth of people who were in it, people who weren't, and everybody wondering why things weren't going a certain way. But I don't want to spoil the book for anybody, but I would recommend it. I did like it a lot, and would I read it again at this point? No. So moving on from that, so Everything Inside. First and foremost, let me say, Edwidge, I adore Edwidge Danticat. I'm not sure if that's how I pronounce her last name, but she is somebody who I have adored since high school, when I first opened the pages of Breath, Eyes, Memory at 14. Like, I literally remember the cover of the book. I was actually in a book club at that time. I remember opening that book and being so enraptured by the story and how poetic her writing was. So I don't have anything bad to say about about Edwidge. Like, her writing is amazing. I've also read Brother, I'm Dying by her, which I don't remember the premise of because it was a required reading in high school. I haven't read it since then, but I may put it on my list at some point. The Farming of Bones, as well as Crick Crock, which I read in 2018. So I have, you know, I have a few of her books under my belt. I think it's safe to say Edwidge Danticat is my favorite author, and I tend to compare her to Roxane Gay a lot in criticism of Roxane Gay, because I read Untamed State in 2016 and I was so appalled and frustrated and annoyed by that story. And because I had Edwidge's writing, you know, from a Haitian, because they're both Haitian, because I had that type of writing under my belt already, reading that was just so disappointing and annoying. And don't get me started on my issues with Miss Roxane Gay. But so Everything Inside is a collection of stories about Haitian people, which is, the stories are all based in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, Miami, Brooklyn, and then there's like this unnamed Caribbean state that one of the story takes place in. And what I love, I think my favorite story was the one called Dosas, which was about these three people who were essentially best friends who had migrated to Miami from Haiti, and two of them were married. One was the wife's best friend, and the husband and the wife's friend ran off together, and then they like scammed the wife years later. The story resonated a lot with me because it was based in Miami, and it felt like I was there. Like, the places that were being described and the things that were going on felt very familiar. I'm not Haitian, but growing up, I went to school with a lot of Haitians, and so I feel like these stories give me so much perspective on people who I did grow up with. Because growing up in Miami at the time that I did, like, you went to school with Haitians, but for me personally, I didn't know much about their personal lives. Like, I remember going to school with a girl. I remember her dad was a cab driver. Another girl who I went to elementary school with, I remember her parents like barely spoke English, and like she had a very, very heavy Haitian accent. And you know, I befriended them, and these are people that one of them I still talk to today. But I feel like it just opens up. I feel like in this society that we live in, Haitian people are very degraded. And the way that Edwidge tells her stories not only humanizes them, which they should be humanized regardless of her stories, but her stories are just so beautiful, and they bring so much light to the things that Haitian people have had to overcome, the way they live their everyday lives, which, I mean, I didn't have any assumptions that they live some like crazy life, but I'm just very intrigued by culture. And I just love hearing stories about, you know, people who aren't from here and learning about what it's like to get on here. And I feel like the stories, they're just so good, you guys. Everything Inside is what I thought Difficult Women by Roxane Gay was gonna be, just to drag her a little bit more. So I would highly recommend Everything Inside. It's a great book, and I read it pretty quickly too. I actually listened to the audiobook, but I tend to, stories like that, every single story was good. You know how sometimes you listen or you read a collection of stories and a few of them just don't hit? That's not the case. Like, every single story was hitting. Like, and she told from so many different perspectives, and I like how she talked about it incorporated like older people, mental health, relationships between husband and wife, relationships between mother and daughter, relationships between daughter and father, relationships between friends, childhood friends, talking about trauma, death, all these different things, but from the perspective of immigrant people trying to make it in America, the ones who wanted to go back. And that's a book I would highly recommend. I love Edwidge Danticat to the end of the world. I probably will end up reading all of her books eventually. But yes, I will highly recommend Everything Inside. Oh my gosh, that book just filled me up. It was so good. And I actually I've read a couple of books by a few other Haitian authors, but Edwidge is that girl. She is that girl. And the last book was How to Be Single and Happy by Jennifer L. Taitz. So I actually started reading this book in December because I finished my December read early. So this was a book that I really wanted to take my time with, especially because I knew it was something that I would need to be highlighting a lot. I would need to be like digesting a lot of scientific information. And I also read it because I felt like I am single. I don't feel like I'm a person who is unhappy being single, but I am a person who feels like I can always be learning and growing. And so that was my purpose for reading it. And honestly, in reading it kind of affirmed for me that I'm pretty secure. I am pretty secure in my singleness because I don't, place my value on any premise that like I need to be with someone. This book, it is for people who are unhappy and being single and think that they're never going to find a mate. And it's also for people who are in relationships that aren't going good and don't know how to leave because they are scared of being single. So this is pretty much the synopsis of the book in a paragraph. The word love, ahava, shares the identical value as the word one, akkad, highlighting that the function of love is to unify, whether you are either by yourself or in the company of others. It's important to strive for becoming united within, so you don't get torn apart by negative thoughts, feelings, or actions. You are whole and worthy of love, no matter what you think in moments of anticipated loneliness. I hope the reminders in this book help you remember that. And like, that's something I highlighted because like, I feel like at some point, maybe even years down the line, that I may need to go back to this book. Like, this is one of those books that you're gonna want to take notes with. Like, there's meditating throughout the book where she'll tell you to like write little notes or to sit down for 3 minutes and meditate. And I think it's a book about wellness. Now, I tend to be a harsh critic of self-help books, but what drew me to this one is that she's a psychologist, or yeah, it says Psych D. Yeah, she's a psychologist, and it's science-based strategies. So that was like my reason for reading it, because I'm a huge critic of self-help books, because all those books do is lie to you and tell you that the world is filled with flowers and cotton candy, and that's not true. So I will say, I think that the author doesn't make a lot of room for what it's like dating as a Black woman, because I think that our experiences are very unique. Obviously the author is a white woman, so I think one of her clients was a Black woman and she described it, but she's just not going to have that perspective of what it's like to be a Black woman, what it's like dating as a Black woman in terms of what the statistics look like for us in dating, and then the historical context of like how we love and how we express sexuality and different things like that. But I think just from a baseline perspective, it is a good reference to have on, just to have those tools to know that you can cope with being single and live a full life without a romantic partner. Like, your life can be full and productive and fun and valuable without a romantic partner, and that's pretty much the basis of the book. So that is it. I hope that I didn't ramble on too long. Just to recap, I talked about Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, Edwidge Danticat's Everything Inside, and Jennifer L. Taitz How to Be Single and Happy. I would recommend all three. Honestly, a lot of times when there'll probably be some books that I dislike, so I'm going to be posting every month the books that I read. Next month, I'm trying to read 30 books this year, so I may keep up doing 3 a month, but I don't technically have to, because if I do 3 a month through the whole year, that would be 36 books, and I'm not necessarily trying to do that because I do want to really analyze books and really like break them down. I didn't do that in this video, but next month I want to read only 2 books so that I can do a better job of like breaking down the different themes and characters and different things like that in the book, to give a more thorough review of the books. But you know, I'm just starting out with the whole book review thing on YouTube, so give me some time. Do y'all like this look? I took pictures today and I posted my eye look. Is this too much? Is this too much for but thank you so much for watching. If you've watched, thank you if you've watched this far into the video, and don't forget to like, make sure you comment. Tell me, what are you reading? What are you reading this year? Did you read anything in January? Tell me about it. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned? What did you think of them? And of course, turn on your notification bell so that you're updated whenever I upload a video. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.